Welcome to the Island Park Fitness Podcast. This is going to be our first episode. Who better to go with than Dr. Jeremy himself?
Here I am. And who are you? Who's leading this voyage?
This is Coach Ryan.
All right.
I'd say thanks for coming out, but we're in Vatra, so
Thanks for coming to work.
yeah.
Coming in.
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm excited to chat through some of the questions that you have lined up.
Yeah. So the main reason we were talking about doing a podcast to begin with was we want to get to know the community better. It'll be more of like an in-house thing. Could find out people's backgrounds. I know, just asking them questions while they're on like a machine or something, and you get a surprising answer.
Mm-hmm.
Spikes the curiosity. Makes me want to know some more. I mean, we talk often. We talk about fitness. We talk about business and current events, but don't really got each other's past down, I don't think. And
No.
I find that stuff fascinating, like people's journeys and how they got to where they got and the crossroads they took. And so I just want to find out some of that stuff with you.
Sounds good. No, and I love that stuff too. That's I love. I'm a people person. I like talking, so I'm always blown away with a lot of the information we get talking to our members here. It's just a lot of interesting people and interesting events, and
Yeah.
that's super cool. So
I think there's rumors that Pav might have worked with J-Lo at one point. You think you know Vlad a little bit, and then you go to his white Gatsby party,
uh-huh.
and some surprising things like that. Or I think Brian Idens was in
Sopranos, and he was Colin Farrell's body double in Pride and Glory.
I don't even know what that is, but
So he's a cop and he plays football
okay.
in the movie. I think there's I don't know if he's the crooked cop or he catches the crooked cops in the movie, but he plays for the NYPD football team as Brian did for like 20 years. Maybe not 20, but he was 40 playing full contact football. Brian Idens.
Very nice.
Respect.
Yeah, you learn some things that you don't know, and
Yeah.
I'd like to know some more.
Yep. So hopefully I'm that interesting. No, I haven't been in the Sopranos. So.
Probably could have. All right, so to get it going, just start with where'd you grow up? Where were you born?
Yeah, so born in New Jersey because my mom was working at a hospital there. She was an occupational therapist, but we lived in Staten Island. Both of my parents, were born in Staten Island, on Staten Island. So for the first 5 years of my life, that's where we lived. Kind of, first in an apartment, then with one grandma, then with the other grandma. So we were around a lot of family early on. And they had the foresight to say, hey, we're not going to be raising our kid here, and bought some land in upstate New York. And my dad actually he was working at NYU at the time, and so he took an architecture class. He's a language professor.
Okay.
Took an architecture class, wrote up the plans for our house, got them approved, and he would work Monday through Friday at NYU, drive up on the weekends, and built my house, like nail by nail with my uncle for like 3 or 4 years. So we moved up there in 1989 up to Stone Ridge, New York, which nobody has ever heard of.
I have not.
Technically a village. So it's near, you can get off the Kingston or the New Paltz exit on the thruway, and then we're, probably 20 minutes from there into the woods. And, grew up, my driveway is a quarter mile long. You don't see a house on my driveway. And even our town, the main road, we didn't have any traffic lights growing up. We have 3 now, so.
So, I'm from Suffolk County, and when I first came out to Nassau, that was the big thing. Like, you guys don't have sidewalks, you all ride horses, and you occasionally do some heroin.
Is that the Suffolk?
I guess that was the Nassau perspective. Definitely grew up with sidewalks and no horses.
Okay, that's what.
No
Well,
heroin.
till you get down to where Brooke's from, way
Yeah.
Elm Lake Grove,
Yeah.
Is that far? Is that farther east than you?
Yeah, it's a little north.
North.
And a little further east. Yeah.
Got it.
But I think Brook had sidewalks as well.
Myth busting.
So you mentioned your father.
Mm-hmm.
What did your mother do?
So she was an occupational therapist, but a hustler. So again, there's different settings that you do, and she ended up working at the Kingston City School District. So she worked in a school, helping kids with handwriting, coordination, learning how to fold and dress themselves and things like that, taking care of a lot of motor control issues. But she also had a side business where she would present on the weekends. She would do seminars. She became an expert in visual perception.
Visual perception.
Yeah. So I grew up, with all, like all those those vision things where like you're like, is it a woman, an old woman or a young woman? Is it a duck or a rabbit? So she like got into the neurology behind all of that stuff. So she would be messing with me and my sister all the time, doing all these different tests on us, and then like using us as guinea pigs for like she wrote a couple chapters in textbooks as well. So yeah, so on top of her regular 9 to whatever 3 schedule of being an occupational therapist, she would be doing that stuff, writing chapters and presenting on the weekends.
Both in education.
Yeah, two educators.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that's had a big influence on me.
Did you grow up with siblings?
Yeah, I have a sister. My sister Liz. She's 5.5 years younger than me.
Okay.
So it's a pretty big gap, being a different, boy and a girl in that big gap. It was kind of big. Love her to death. And we've had some fun adventures. Her perspective on life is a little different than mine. I thought I was a great older brother, but apparently I was terrible. Pick on her a little bit, But yeah, that was my girl.
Yeah, I grew up with a older brother by 2 years. We were very close. But then I grew up with a younger brother, like 4.5 years. Friends were never quite the same. Like it was just outside that gap.
Yeah, you missed that overlap a little bit. Like I was out of middle school by the time she was getting there, and same thing with high school. So it's like, there's a huge gap.
So what kind of sports did you do growing up, or what was like your first physical activities?
Yeah, I mean, like organized wise, it was baseball. Like, it was straight Americana, and that was probably it outside of the playground. So the playground, it was a lot of football, kickball, basketball and stuff like that. And it's funny looking back on it how that would move around, and that would come into play later because we played a ton of football. We had a kid who his brother ended up playing at Hofstra, and his brother must have been 8 years older than us. And he was the first kid to come out of our school to go play college football. Dude was a beast. And, he had that influence on his younger brother who was my age. Okay. So we were always throwing footballs, and, he kind of led us in that direction. But organized baseball, starting in that second grade, I played that all the way up through high school. Stopped in college to play football, and then I ended up playing baseball in Europe in my mid-20s and winning a national championship over there, which was cool. But back to childhood, started playing flag football, 5th and 6th grade, organized football 7th grade through senior year. I tried out for the basketball team for the first time in 8th grade, didn't make it. Didn't try out freshman year, tried out sophomore year, made it. Junior year, the coach told me, he goes, I usually take 12 guys on the roster. You're the 13th because you hustle hard. I had some athleticism, but mid-season there, I was the 6th man on the team. I was the first one off the bench because I hustled, and I had length and I was athletic. Not a lot of skill, but man, could I set a trap on D and rebound. Yeah. So those are the and then senior year I was the captain of the basketball team. So
wow, okay.
So that was kind of the majority of my sports there.
Yeah, me and all the neighborhood kids, we would cycle through sports. We'd play hockey for 3 months, and then something else, and I never liked the basketball.
No.
No.
There's a thing that I love is like anybody who's done wrestling, throwing them a basketball. It's always ugly.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
No, I had a kid I went to college with who was a phenomenal athlete. He was a great wrestler. I think he won back-to-back state championships. And he came into Ithaca, where I went to school. He was signed up to play football, wrestle, and play baseball in college. Dude was a phenomenal athlete. But you throw the guy a basketball. It wasn't it wasn't pretty.
So when you were growing up with your parents, would you say more strict, gave you a lot of freedom because you were the oldest, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was the test dummy,
yeah.
Right? I don't think they were that strict, to be honest with you. I mean, they were very supportive and very loving, but it wasn't like, go to bed at this time, or, don't do that, don't eat this, don't do that type of thing. It was a little bit more free range, I guess. Unless my mom used to put me to bed, and then I would sneak down later. Like if the NBA finals were on, I'd sneak down, and my dad would be like, "Yeah, just sit next to me, watch this." Okay. So yeah, kind of hands off in that regard, I think. but super supportive at the same time.
So parents were busy. Does that mean nutrition was looking like a lot of Happy Meals, or was there some home meat and potatoes?
So, yeah, that's a good question. So we didn't eat a lot of fast food, mainly because we didn't even have a traffic light, so we didn't have fast food in town.
$100 DoorDash bills.
Yeah, well, didn't exist back then, you know. No, and then the other thing is my dad's a vegetarian. He's been a vegetarian for 46 years.
Okay.
So he became a vegetarian before I was even born. So he would just make his own meals. Like he never really, yeah, I'm sure there were times he made us dinner, but it was kind of like he would take care of himself, and then my mom would kind of cook the meals for us. But for her, yeah, she's working 9 to 3, then doing stuff after the fact. We were latchkey kids, so we would stick around in the after school program. And yeah, she'd come home and try and throw some stuff together, but it was a lot of like frozen stuff and meatloafs and things like that. And so it was good, like when and a very carb based diet though, I will say. So that was dinner. Breakfast, we were kind of left to our own devices. I got to the point. I was also a chubby kid growing up.
Really?
Yeah, I played. So when I talk about football, I played offensive line until I was a sophomore in high school.
Oh wow.
I started on varsity as a sophomore, so I was a mean little fat guy. But yeah, I was chubby kind of through middle school and into high school. And I look back on it, and it was like, man, breakfast. I was drinking Slim Fast for breakfast, and then I'd go and I'd have whatever the school lunch was for the day, and then whatever my mom would have for dinner. High school I would say it got worse, because it would be like wake up, have some cereal, and I would get my allowance for food for school for the week, which is like $20. So what I'd end up doing is literally eating mozzarella sticks. It was $1.50 for 5 mozzarella sticks, and that would be my lunch, and then I'd go play sports and then come home and eat. Not to mention I would ration it, to like buy some weed on the weekend, like, wait a minute, I'm doing the math. I'm like, well, if I only have mozzarella sticks, I'll have $10 for throwing on a bag or, beers or something like that. That was the mindset kind of, later in high school. But so it was bad. It was bad nutrition. The one thing, if I can go back and change it, would be my nutrition in high school. So
you should try it today. Just have 10 mozzarella sticks, go play some football, see how you feel.
Just feel like trash. Like I don't know how I was doing it, and like again, when I have young athletes that come in the office here, because I see my fair amount of kids that are in their teens, and I always ask what they're eating, because like I look at that as like you're on steroids at that point, like on like a hormonal level. Yeah. And if you're active and you're on steroids and you feed yourself correctly, sky's the limit. Like I was telling you, my friend that his brother played at Hofstra. He was 6'6", 240 his senior year.
Wow. Yeah.
So great genetics. And then he got a full ride to play at the University of Miami in 2001 to 2005. Like stud athlete. But his brother was on him. He was pounding protein shakes. He was eating bananas dipped in, peanut butter. He smelled terribly to be around. But like, again, if he wouldn't have been that big, he would have been that wiry 200-pound 6'6" kid. If he hadn't had that nutrition, if he hadn't had that, he wouldn't have got to where he got to athletically. So yeah, there was a lot of work to be done back there.
So what were the origins of your dad being vegetarian? Is that just a strictly moral thing, or was that? No,
I think so he's an avid exerciser too.
Okay.
He was a big swimmer. So I'm a 3rd generation lifeguard. So his dad was a lifeguard. He grew up lifeguarding. His whole family swam competitively. So I think he got to the point where I guess he wasn't maybe training as much, and he was, I don't know what happened, but he told me he was eating like cold cut sandwiches every day for a summer, and he ballooned up to like over 200 pounds and was just super uncomfortable, and he just flicked the switch and was like, I'm not eating meat.
Wow.
And that was his reasoning. I mean, he reads a lot, so I'm sure he had some other reasoning behind there. But yeah, I mean, I will say it's interesting to map that out now over 46 years and to look at him.
Yeah.
He's 76.
Still going?
He's still going. Like, rides his bike avidly.
Vegetarian though?
Still vegetarian.
Okay.
I will say he has no knees left. Like, you can hear him lunge across the room like a creaky, and again, he did a lot of running. Not to say it's the only factor in it, but So the negative sides is his joints aren't the best, but might have been that way anyway. And he's not on any medications. Like his blood pressure, his cholesterol, all that stuff is fine. And you look at him, you're like, I don't think you look 76. Like I get 76-year-olds in here, and I'm like, yo, my dad's killing it. So there's something to it.
Did it ever spike your curiosity? Did you ever try it?
No, I think maybe I tried once or twice. I'm like, I'm just hungry. Like I'm never satiated if I'm not eating meat.
If you're not pounding rice and oatmeal, it's a lot of vegetables.
Yeah, well, and I feel like you have to be smart to do it the right way. Because I know a lot of unhealthy vegetarians. And for the record, when I get a vegetarian in the office, they are very hard to get out of pain. Because metabolically, they just don't, again, the unhealthy vegetarians who are like, I don't eat meat, but I'll still eat Skittles and all this other BS. They're just metabolically not in a state where they can regenerate their tissues. So they either take a really long time, which is frustrating, or they just never get there. Because it's like, yo, you're not putting the materials into your body to regrow your tissue. So this isn't going to happen. So just like a side note clinically.
Did it for like a year in high school.
Just
wanted to see what would happen. I was like in prime bodybuilding time when I tried it. But it was just all the soy alternatives. Like Morningstar, the hamburgers, the chicken nuggets. It definitely wasn't a smart move. After the year, I got back to meat and I felt a lot better right away.
Yeah, but see, I find that fascinating about you that you could do that. Like you just flick a switch and you're done. You're like, okay, I'm doing this now. Yeah. And there's no cheating. There's just like, you're just doing it. Blows my mind.
My brother actually started it, and then after like 2 weeks in, I got curious. And same thing. You read some of the positives, and you're like, all right, let me see how I actually feel. Just kind of followed him, and we were able to stick to it together.
That's cool. Yeah, so it's good to have that support, huh?
Little experiment.
Cool. No, that's awesome that you do that. It's funny, like it just reminded me like when I watched that documentary Game Changers came out about being vegan.
Yes.
And I don't know if you go back and watch it. There was the guy who kind of narrated it, or he's an MMA guy.
Yeah.
And as they're talking about it, I'm watching him, and he's in a ring, and there's a giant Burger King logo in the middle of the ring, and it's right when they came out with the Impossible Burger, and I'm like, I see what's going on here. It was just like, yo, this is straight propaganda for selling this vegan burger, and like, I don't know. Again, some people I'm sure it works for. Like I know Kathy's in the gym, and she's a savage, and she's vegan, and she runs like an animal and is super fit, and she finds a way to make it work. And I'm sure she's very dialed in on it. But I feel like a lot of people will, basically take meat out but not replace it, or not, combine the amino acids, and so they end up putting themselves in an unhealthy state. Like, moral of the story, I think you need to be really smart and concentrated to be a vegetarian or a vegan the healthy way.
Yeah, to get the proper calories, it's work. You have to prepare a lot. Most people will go for the soy nugget instead because you can air fry it or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, but definitely miss out on that.
Not complete nutrition.
So you were from the slums of Shaolin, right? You went
SINY 10304.
You went to upstate. That's where you did all your schooling.
So yeah, so that's where I did high school, in the Mid Hudson Valley there, and then I went up to Ithaca College, up in the Finger Lakes, kind of down at the bottom of Lake Cayuga there, and that came about just to go back athletically. We won. I'm very proud. If you know me, I've brought this up because I'm very proud of it. But we won a state championship in football my senior year, and it was just cool because we were underdogs all the way. We started out the season not so good, and it was just like the Cinderella story that we got to be a part of. And again, and looking back on it, it started in like third grade with us playing football together, and there was that nucleus of guys that were there that we played all the way to senior year, and it's just something special about that for me. And again, going up to Syracuse and winning the whole thing, we went up against a team. They were 49-1 in their last 50 games coming in. Nobody gave us a snowball shot in hell. But when that happens, when you're on a team like that, and that's what I would, kind of tell the parents out there who are thinking about their kids. And I've seen this where parents are like, they don't like other kids like outshining their kids, even when they're on their own team. And what I would say is, I wouldn't have gone to Ithaca and probably wouldn't have ended up in chiropractic school in here if I hadn't been on that team. Because having my friend be a goddamn animal and be recruited and pull us to that level. When you win a state championship, all the schools started coming around looking at everybody on our team. So we win that. Now I'm sitting in math class, 3 weeks later, and I get a call from the principal's office, and they're like, "Hey, come down. There's a recruiter here that wants to talk to you." So all these Division III schools came and talked to me, and I hadn't even thought about playing college football. Wasn't even on my radar. I'm like, me? Like, what? No, like, you stop playing sports at that high school. Like, that's for, like, the freaks. So that kind of was like, oh, wow. And so I had, 8 to 10 schools looking at me, and, Ithaca was on the list, so we went up and visited, and that's how I ended up there. And so just kind of, again, kind of put a bow on that is like, if there's some talented kids on your kids' team now in first, second, third grade, make sure they hang out with them. Like, do everything to make everybody, rising tide raises all ships. But anyway, that's how I ended up at Ithaca, because I had a chance to play football there. And, studied, went in health science pre-professional. So I didn't have a major. I was in the health school, but I didn't have a major yet. And I ended up doing clinical exercise science, which is very cardiac function based. Okay. But, you get all your basic sciences, basic exercise stuff. And I ended up there for 4 years. And then went up after that, went up to chiropractic college, which is on the same lake, just an hour north, the gray capital of the world, also known as Seneca Falls, New York. And so I spent another 4 years on the north end of the lake doing that.
Cool. Yeah. To add to your point, over the MMA mats, we had iron sharpens iron right above it.
Yeah.
Want to train with the best guys, and you're only going to get better.
I know. It's just like, just keep up, like, you're just going to get better being around better people. Like, I love, there's this kid that plays with my son, and he's just, like, phenomenal and everything. I'm like, good. Go toe-to-toe with him. Yeah. I look at my best friend growing up. He was taller than me, bigger than me, more coordinated than me. And we would just battle playing basketball in the summertime. And how much better that made me. I had to figure out, how to body up somebody that was, 3 inches taller than me and 20 pounds heavier than me in the block. I had to, again, get a better handle so I could, dribble around him. You have to problem solve. So, anyway. So
you were, in your words, fat lineman in high school. So when we get to college, are we still playing what position?
No, so it's funny. Sophomore year of high school, I was 5'10", 185.
Okay.
Right.
So you trimmed down a bit?
No. That was kind of like heavy. Right. It was chubby. It was a chubby 185.
Gotcha.
Before that, I was like 5'5". I think 5'5", like 165. I would come home. When I didn't have sports, I'd come home. I would just cut off a block of cheese and watch Ricky Lake. And that was like my after-school program for a while, and like take a nap. So I missed some of those prime training years. So I was 5'10", 185 of just a little angry guy. And then by the spring, I was 6'1", 150 pounds.
Oh wow! Okay.
So I grew lost 30 pounds and grew 3 inches in the span of 5-6 months. Nice. So that led to junior year being like, they didn't know what to do with me. The coaches were pissed. They're like, dude, we thought we had our offensive line set.
Eat more cheese.
Yeah, they're like, please eat milkshakes before you go to bed at night, and get back on the cheese and Ricky Lake diet. So senior, I was playing free safety. So nice. I went from all the way up on the line to running around as they call it, basketball players with helmets. So yeah.
So one thing I do know is you spent some time in Croatia.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
So so halfway through chiropractic school, I caught the fancy, and we caught the fancy of each other. This wonderful girl named Anita. So it's an interesting spot because you're towards the end of school. You're in this relationship. You really like this person. You're into it, but you're coming to this crossroads, right? Where it's like, hey, we're gonna be going our separate ways. So kind of what happened early. I was painting a house. I'll give you the long story here. So
shirtless?
I have my shirt on. No, so it was a break. That's what I would do in between chiropractic school breaks. It was like 2 or 3 weeks. So I go home, and this woman down the block from me, older woman, I'd paint rooms in her house. Now she wanted me to paint the outside of her house, which is a large undertaking to get done in 2 weeks by yourself. So I had been dating Anita for maybe 5 months, and I was talking to her, and she was like, "Oh, I'll come down and help you." I'm like, "Oh, sick." So she came down, and I don't know if you've ever painted with anybody, but it's just a lot of time to talk, you know. So we're talking, and we finally get to that point where we're like, "Hey, what are you doing after school?" And my mindset was, listen, I grew up in the Hudson Valley, went to the Finger Lakes. I spent my entire life in New York. I got to go see something different. So I was planning on going West Coast, you know, like Northern California, Oregon, you know, to see what's going on out there. Just throw myself out there. So she goes, "Well, I have citizenship in Croatia," and I was like, "Well, that's not New York." So that was August '07. We went to visit Croatia in April 08. So we stayed with her family. We went there for like 10 days. She still has a ton of like extended family over there. And, you know, we stopped in England on the way back, and I just remember having a conversation with my cousin. I was like, "I'm moving to Croatia and I'm marrying this woman." So we came back, and, you know, that's where my mind was. Yeah, so then we finished out school, and we moved there in June of 2009.
Nice.
Just fresh out of school, just naive as, pardon my French, fuck, just as naive as can be. You know, I was looking at it, I'm like, oh, there's only 12 chiropractors in the country. It's 4 million people. Like, this will be great. But not having any idea about economics or how to run a business. And they had socialized healthcare. We were going to be out of net, people are going to be paying out of pocket. People aren't used to paying out of pocket. So it provided its own challenges. But like we said before, you got to throw yourself into those situations and figure it out.
So before moving there, was it back and forth, or was it those 10 days and then
that was it, man?
All in?
That was it.
Brave, man.
Brave or dumb. One of the two. One of the two. But yeah, I mean, like we had those conversations where, like, listen, you know, we got serious quick. You know, we ended up getting married before we went there, like in a small ceremony, you know, kind of to make it easier. But you know, we were gonna say, hey, look, we're gonna have kids. You know, like, we're gonna do this. When are we going to go to move to Croatia? Is it going to be easier when we have a kid? Not to mention, like, you also think about economically here. That's when, like, we had the recession, that 2008, 2009 with the housing market crash. So things were kind of bleak here. So it was like, well, screw it. Let's get out of here.
It's interesting.
Yep.
So you get to Croatia. I looked it up this morning. I think there was just under 4 million people. It's the total population.
Yeah,
so
it's West Virginia.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say New York is over 20. Jersey is like 9.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the day-to-day like? Were the people similar? Or
Oh, man. How long is this going to be? No, I know. So it evolved as we went there. It was really, so we got the advice to go move to where her family was from. Talking to some people, they're like, listen, if you go in and you know somebody that can kind of plug you into the social pipeline, like in Dumb and Dumber, like kind of vouches for you, right? There's some sort of level of trust there. So we moved to where her family was from, which is a small town, like in the hillsides of Croatia, like Alabama, Croatia, you know. And, you know, we get our place up and running, and they still do siesta. So we're like I'm planning on having, you know, that 8 to 3, 8 to 4 work day. Everything closes at noon and doesn't reopen till 4. Everybody goes home, has a big lunch, a little wine, a little nap, you know.
Ricky Lake.
What's that?
Some Ricky Lake.
No Ricky Lake. What did we watch though? They had American. Oh, First Watch. Remember that show? No. Yeah, I wouldn't have known it either but it was always on during our break in the middle of the day, where we would go home, cook dinner or cook a lunch, and then we would just like lay down and watch that, maybe take a nap, and then go back out. It was a very different pace of life out there.
Yeah.
But you're also, you know, in the office till 8 o'clock at night to get your work day in. Okay. So it was, I didn't like it. It was kind of cool because, like, yeah, I could go work out in the middle of the day and, you know, eat, and it slows down life, but it also kind of elongates it where you don't have that full rest. You got to, like, get your head back in the game to get back down to the office. So after that, we moved to a bigger city. The second biggest city is Split, and that was just regular kind of, you know, Western kind of schedule there. People were I met some tough people there, some wonderful people there too. And what I learned is that no matter where you go, there are wonderful people and there are assholes. It just depends the ratio. And over there, the ratio is not favorable. We met, and there was a cultural component too. We're like here, it's very common. Like you hold a door for somebody if you're going into a store. Like, oh, you're in distance, I'll hold the door for you. Somebody says thank you, they hold the door. You kind of pass the door on. Yeah. This is a small example. Like you'd hold the door for somebody over there, they wouldn't even look at you, they just walk by. And again, it's just like I'm like, yeah, what the like, but why am I looking for that? And that's their mindset. Like, I didn't ask you to hold the door. Why would I fucking thank you or hold it? I didn't want to hold it. So that cultural thing there, very, very straightforward. Again, we're in New York, so we're more straightforward than most people. Yeah. They're even more so, and crazier drivers. So,
you had me at siesta. You're losing me a bit.
Well, that's the thing. There was that give and take, So yeah, but long story short, we're back here because after 5.5 years, we had our daughter there. Also, if you talk to my wife, side note, they treat women very differently over there, extremely. And like she got on the shit end of a couple situations where it was just like one time, like for example, so when we first opened our office, my working papers were submitted but not cleared. Big newspaper comes, interviews us, New Yorkers in scene, blah, blah, blah. I ball about chiropractic, and I didn't have my working papers. So the next day, we got all these people calling the office. It's great. And then the police show up, and they're like, where are your papers? And I'm like, they're in process. It's fine, right? And they're like, no. And if I see you here, I'm sending you back to America. So I was on paid leave for a little bit there. But one day, she's in the office working. I'd gone out for a run. I was going to pop by the office and stand at the door. And I go in, and like, there's a younger guy in there, an older guy in there, and Anita's face is just red. And two guys leave without saying anything. You could just tell there was a tension in the air. And I was just like, they leave. She gets really emotional. I'm like, what the fuck just happened in here? And the guy he was ripping her apart because he brought his dad, older guy, and it was supposed to be a half an hour visit. And Anita started asking questions. And the guy was like, why are you asking questions? Got super like heated with her. Like, this is a half an hour. You need to be doing work for like being super rude about it. And Anita and the old guy was feeling weird. Like, and he was like, hey, like the old guy was like giving her the, I'm sorry, da 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 da. But he was super persistent. As soon as I walked in the room, he didn't say a thing. He just slumped his shoulders and walked out. So that's what they do. Like, again, one instance, isolate, but there was many more of those where it's just like, hey, you're a woman, I'm gonna fucking steamroll you. Or like we would talk to landlords about renting space when I didn't speak any Croatian and she did. And so they would start talking to me and she'd be like, not for nothing, but he doesn't understand anything you're saying, right? And she's like, I understand, talk to me. And they would just give her like the okay, sweetheart. And then they just continue to talk to me. Like, I'd rather talk to a man who doesn't understand than a woman who they could actually communicate with. So again, those are like two small examples, but there's some crappy stuff there over that I've never seen here.
What was the English speaking over there? Was it just about everybody? Or?
It depended on the age group, to be honest with you. Like, so everybody that was our age and younger, they grew up with Cartoon Network in English. Wow. So their English was actually pretty good. There was a high rate of English speaking in the people born in the 80s and after. And I did find it interesting that there was probably a higher percentage of people who spoke and understood English, mainly because of the TV, because their American TV was in English with Croatian subtitles, versus if you go to Spain or Germany or Italy, they dub everything. Yeah. So those countries don't hear as much English on television. So I would say there's, like, in my experience in traveling around over there, there's a lower percentage of people who speak English in those countries, just for that reason alone. Like, I would always ask people, oh, you take English? They're like, no, I just watch Cartoon Network.
Yeah, I'm picturing a bunch of Croatians all talking with a Dexter accent.
Yeah, exactly.
Dexter's little boy guitar. That'd be hilarious. All right, so pack up from Croatia, you head back to New York?
Yeah. I came back. Actually, I visited here in summer 2014, because we kind of decided, hey, we're moving back, and again, we had our daughter over there, and that's where I was going with this. Is I wasn't going to raise my daughter in that atmosphere. Yeah. I'm not, like, Anita struggled with it. For the years we were over there, I'm like, I'm not, watering this flower in this garden here. So we finally decided to come back. So contacted a guy who I went to chiropractic school with. He was a year behind me, but we opened the first CrossFit gym there. And I was running my clinic, which was very soft tissue based. and he was kind of doing the same thing here. So I just reached out and was like, hey, what's going on? Let me come visit. So I came to visit, and just to see what I was going to get into, because I was just planning on opening my own thing when we got back. And then after hanging out, he's like, actually, I'm looking for a business partner, and that's how I ended up here in living in Long Beach and in Island Park here.
What year would you say that was?
It was so we moved back right before Christmas 2014. We walked into our apartment here January 2nd, 2015.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Which again seems like yesterday, but it's over 8 years ago.
Yeah. So what year do you meet Rob?
What year was that? I think it was probably, if it wasn't 2015, it was 2016. I think it was 2016. And it was Sean was the guy who ran this. He also had an event called Flex on the Beach.
Yeah.
And so I was operating a booth there, just to kind of for the clinic. And I think we had started the online stuff at that point. So I was just doing bush league treatments and talking about strength balance and rehabbing people. And Rob had rounded up a ton of people from Bay Ridge CrossFit where he was at. And I think I ended up treating Nikki. Nikki was there. So I kind of met those two. And that's when the first time that we had just kind of were introduced. And then Sean was saying he saw Rob as, hey, we need to get this guy here, because the gym had kind of been destabilized because his partner Mike had left.
Yeah.
And he was the guy that was doing the programming. He was leading the team, he was the engine doing a lot of the coaching in there. And Sean was trying to find somebody who could kind of bring that community together and not necessarily program, but bring the community together and be a leader and a coach. And he saw what Rob was able to do in rounding up so many people and getting them, to Flex on the Beach, and his leadership in that gym. So he asked me, I wasn't even involved with the gym at that point. I was just in the clinic and doing online stuff. And he's like telling me about him, but he's like, do we make it work financially, this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, listen, if Randy Moss is a free agent, do you sign him? So yeah, he did. And, and that's when he started. The years are blurry, but I want to say end of 2016 or 2017, he started coming out here from Brooklyn.
Nice.
I have to ask him.
Side note, Hopkins and the Patriots didn't happen. How do you feel about that?
We're on a sinking ship these days. We were riding high for 20 years. But when you look at the Brady Belichick argument, and they're like, Belichick always gets these guys at, bargain prices, and they come in and they have these great years. Yeah, I think it was about playing with Tom Brady too. Nothing against Billy. Again, he's one of the people that lives in my head rent free. I look up to what he's done with tremendous admiration. But yeah, you're playing with Tom Brady. You're at least in the AFC Championship game every year.
Got a smiling Jet fan over here. Excited for the year. See what happens.
Well, anyway, the Mets and the Jets, right? Very similar franchises here. Talk to a Mets fan back in February; they were fired up too. So let's not jet it up here just yet. But I will be at the game. I'll be at the game at MetLife. Carrie Ann and Andrew Dixon were nice enough to get me some tickets, so I'll get front row seats to probably a dismantling of the Patriots by Aaron Rodgers. But we'll see.
Excited for that. You mentioning Flex, I was probably there in 2015, 16 competing. I remember seeing Mike there, who you just mentioned. And I think he was programming it at the time.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, Flex was fun, although some logistics.
Well, the logistics are always tough, man.
Yeah.
It's funny because you start looking at it, right? And I remember, I was never part of that. I was never part of that business, but I sat in on some of the meetings and stuff like that. And it's tough when you plan those things, man. It's because you go in with these best intentions, but then you're like, wait a minute, how do we standardize this? Yeah. Oh shit, we got I think even CrossFit is dealing with that now at the games. It's like, are these judges legitimate? When you're coming down to fractions of seconds and reps and no reps, and it's still a tricky proposition on that level. So to do it here at this at the lower level, where there's no money, or it's hard to make money off of, it's tough. And again, I went through. Side note, we called this the Dalmatian Throwdown when we were over in Croatia. We had a 2-day event and basically had all the people from Croatia, all the CrossFitters at the time. So that was probably 2012. I did an online qualifier that I designed, which is basically a combination of Grace and Cindy.
Okay.
So it was like ascending ladder of rounds of Cindy and clean and jerks. That was the qualifier. It was like, all right, you got to be able to move weight, move your body for a long time. And the shit I got from that for like, this one guy's super fit, but like his videos sucked, and I didn't know if he did all the reps, and everybody's coming after me. I'm like, yeah, here's the fucking video. What do you want me to say?
Yeah,
So from there to then to hosting it, and just get like we got a rugby field, so we did day 1 on the rugby field, day 2 at our place, and saying, hey, we need judges. So I had to educate all the judges, do the programming, do the promoing, do all that stuff. Probably lost money on the whole thing.
Yeah.
So going through, it's one of those things. It's like it's easy to point at things and say they suck. It's harder to fix them, And so I think for what Flex was, it was like, yeah, it's a good day. If you're going in not being competitive, right? Cool. Like, let's just go have fun. Get a little competition out. But yeah, if you were going in that to win it, it must have been super frustrating because there's just all those things involved. You're like, yo, that guy's not fucking squatting. Like you're just judging the other group. So anyway,
there was a lot of traveling at the time. Like we'd go to Connecticut, Boston, and all these different places to find good competitions. And this one is in the backyard on a beach. Like you couldn't say no.
Yeah, no. Again, you get a great day. You're on the beach. So there's an appeal to that too. But yeah, if you're trying to win. Tough proposition.
Your gym mates would see like the podium photos or like the videos, but nobody would come drive to Boston to watch you compete. Right. They would just come down to Long Beach. That was awesome. They loved it.
Yeah, and the atmosphere was pretty good. On the good years.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it was really good.
That's cool. So we're coming up on 42 minutes. So I think we're gonna start to end this.
I got so much more though.
We'll do a part 2. We'll let the fans demand it.
Yeah, what we'll have to do is a couple of Ask Me Anythings for everybody here, like for you, for Rob, for me, Colleen. Let's get Colleen involved. Meg. Let's get the whole Anita, Nikki. Let's get the whole team in. So yeah, if you guys made it to this point, come up with questions for us. We wanna answer those questions.
So we got the newsletter out last month was our first one.
Mm-hmm.
This month will be the second, and I think we're looking to put this into there. Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
Cool.
All right, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the questions.
Yeah, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, my pleasure.